the two that were charged in relation to that crystal meth hall, that quite fascinating whole scenario down around Kerry, have been back in court. There's further charges brought, and obviously, as the time has gone on, they're facing more and more serious charges. James Leen, in particular, now is going to be charged with directing a criminal organisation. We know that they're headed for the Special Criminal Court. Certainly, an application has been made for both him and for Nathan McDonnell's cases to be heard there. They're still at the district court level. Both are still in custody, having been refused bail. Things are getting far more serious for them, aren't they, every time they appear in court?
Yeah, I mean, this case has been winding its way slowly through the system, and we've been updating it. I suppose because of the high-profile nature of the case, these updates happen all the time. But today was the first day. We had actually heard this in the last hearing that more charges were likely to be brought by the DPP, and today they were brought. And these are both men have been charged under what's called the anti-gangland legislation that was brought in, I mean, almost 20 years ago now, but updated as it's gone along. And James Leen has facing a charge that hasn't been brought against too many people, but it's directing a criminal organisation. Nathan McDonnell has been charged with the lesser offence of facilitating a criminal organisation. Now, these charges, as we've heard in many cases that we've covered, tend to be very long, but I'll read out the charge against James Leen. Mr. Leen is charged with directing the activities of a criminal organisation within the state between February the 7th, 2023 and February the 16th, 2024. He also faces drugs-related charges, including the unlawful possession of drugs for sale and supply, and they're at more or less the same dates. So that's...
And those drugs for sale or supply charges relate to the Ballyseedy Garden Centre in Kerry, which of course was owned by Nathan McDonnell.
Yeah, and Nathan McDonnell before had been charged with sale and supply drugs, but he is also now been charged with knowing of the existence of a criminal organisation and participating or contributing to its activities to commit a serious crime, namely the importation and sale or supply of drugs, a long mouthful. But basically these
He's
laws...
also charged with that methamphetamine that was found in the garden centre.
Yeah, and he's now been brought further charges in relation to the importation of those drugs as well. Before he was charged with kind of for sale and supply charges, but he's facing these new charges.
So we were trying to, before we came on, to Google the kind of sentences, maximum sentences that exist, or, what the cutoff point in them. And we're a little bit confused about some of those newer gangland charges. They seem to hold between, certainly that what Nathan McDonnell is facing, they seem to hold up to 5 years, up to 10 years, etc. Some of those individual charges. But we do know that directing a criminal organisation for James Leen, that has a maximum life imprisonment. We haven't seen that being handed down. Of course, you said very few people have actually been charged with it.
Yeah.
The two that spring to my mind at most recent, both pleaded guilty, were Padder Keating, a member of the Kinahan organised crime group, a sort of a sidekick of Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, and Barry Young, who was described as the head of an organised crime group in Sligo. And both got 10, 12 years, I think, sentences on those direction charges. But they are serious. They're probably the most serious that can be brought from drug-related matters.
Yeah, obviously the sale and supply of drugs, and in which case it's obviously valued at over 13,000. So that is a minimum sentence of 10 years under Irish legislation, which both of these men would have automatically faced. But obviously the directing a criminal organisation, which was brought in really to target people who are regarded as controlling these organisations. So that can face a life tariff now. In Barry Young's case, there was a very early plea. He pled guilty within a number of months, and all of those things are taken into consideration.
And he also told the court during a sentence hearing that he was in fear for his life. He was under threat and he owed a lot of money. Now, look, these guys are still before the district court, as I said, both of them. Obviously, James Leen is facing the more serious charge. But Nathan McDonnell, he has a long list of charges now to face. The likelihood is that it'll be sometime towards the end of the summer, you imagine, when everything starts working again, that a decision will be made whether or not they go to the Special Criminal Court. It's very likely they will go to the Special Criminal Court, given we're now looking at an organised crime group, is what the state is putting before the courts. And of course, this seizure of the methamphetamine, which happened in the Ballyseedy Garden Centre, was linked in a larger way to the Sinaloa cartel, headed once by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman and now by his sons. And that was to do with a still at large former Kerry man who was a relative basically of the Guzmans and who's wanted in Chile.
Yeah. I mean, we heard that the book of evidence would be ready on July the 30th, in which case both of the defendants, who've both pled not guilty, they both indicated that they are going to enter a not guilty plea. Certainly, we've heard some evidence during the bail hearings where Mr. McDonnell in particular has disassociated for himself. His defence solicitor said he wasn't aware drugs were being stored there. But we heard that the book of evidence will be ready on July the 30th, and then the case will be sent forward to the appropriate court. And that's clearly a reference to the Special Criminal Court, because we heard at an earlier date that there was an application to hear it in the Special Criminal Court. Obviously then, that's the broader charges relate to the importation of this massive amount of crystal meth. We've heard earlier that there was an international dimension, I think is how it was described in court, and that has been linked to the Sinaloa cartel. The belief was that the drugs were going to land in Ireland and then be moved on to an address in Australia. And we've already heard some bits of the details about how a person was set up to receive those drugs. An address was set up to receive those drugs over there, and it's the guards' belief that that was the final destination for this huge seizure. The broader investigation, I suppose, is a guy called Maurice O'Shea Salazar, who we've spoken about before. But Maurice O'Shea Salazar's just an incredible backstory, I suppose.
So he's still on the run?
Well, he's still on the run.
He's wanted in Chile, isn't that right?
He's wanted in Chile.
Which is kind of where, in a way, the story for us began, because, of course, his mother was before the courts there. The Chilean authorities, I think, forwarded some information to Europe because they believed that Maurice O'Shea Salazar was based at that point in Spain. He is caught up on the EncroChat phone hack.
Yeah.
And certainly we have seen some files in relation to that which show his links to associates in the Kerry area. Of course, he was brought up in Kerry, and the mother had come from
the mother had come from Mexico, and she'd landed in Kerry when Maurice O'Shea was in his early teens. He went to school in Killorglin, got in the usual teenage trouble in Killorglin, got in a bit of trouble, amassed a couple of public order convictions. Sometime when he was in his late teens, early 20s, he left. And I suppose people forgot about him to an extent from Kerry, and then he reappears on this massive international investigation into what's been described as the European wing of the Sinaloa cartel. And we heard all the evidence in that case because Maurice O'Shea's mother and his uncle were convicted and given 11-year sentences.
Yeah.
But as part of that investigation, we heard that Maurice O'Shea Salazar, as he's also known, was the head of the person directing this whole organisation. And he was moving, the organisation was buying drugs in Colombia, moving it across the border in Chile, and then sending it back to Europe, mostly on container ships.
And we saw that from the EncroChat files because, of course, EncroChat was a wide sweeping hack, but then there were certain individuals who had the EncroChat phones who were purposely targeted.
Yeah.
And it would appear that that's what happened in Salazar's case. And we're able to see from the messages, the network he has, how he is using the ports of Europe and believes that he's paid off personnel within those ports. He's using Spanish ports, Dutch, to bring in the drugs into Europe, cocaine.
Yeah.
Now, there's no mention of meth in the EncroChat files.
No, there isn't, because the EncroChat...
It's all cocaine.
It's all cocaine on that occasion. I mean, I think there is some mention of cannabis, but it's relatively small. But what you see, that's a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
Over that EncroChat period. And I think it was, you're talking about a couple of 100 kilos within that 3-month time frame. Obviously, he didn't start from when the EncroChat hack stopped. So what you really see is he has this logistical network. Not just people in the ports to receive the containers, but he has access to people in ports in Chile who are going to load it onto these container ships who aren't aware of the drugs being smuggled. He has people to receive it in customs ports around Europe. And then he has a network of hauliers who are going to deliver it to various locations. So he's managing this whole network. Obviously, the crystal meth is not featured in that, but it's the logistical network really is what he offers to the Sinaloa cartel, even more so than the actual wholesaling of the drugs. So his connections with the Chapitos, as they're called, the sons of El Chapo Guzman, are, they're also laid bare in these EncroChat messages where you can see that his uncle is texting them directly, texting them about sums of money moving, texting them about the purchase of cocaine, which is, they're obviously buying it off Colombian suppliers on behalf of the Sinaloa cartel, maybe at a discounted rate. But after that point at which it's purchased, then they seem to take control of the logistical movements of it. And you can see how important that whole side of the business is to international drug trafficking.
Yeah, it's interesting to see a totally separate network to the Kinahan organisation actually operating as well. I'm not saying it's good to see that. I'm just saying it's interesting to see that because we, so much of the cocaine could be tracked back to them for so many years. But going back, I suppose, to Nathan McDonnell and to James Leen and their positions. So the court heard that there's going to be no bail application for James Leen.
Yeah.
So that means when eventually he does come to court, if he is found guilty or takes a plea of guilty, whatever his time he has served and he's in custody for the last couple of months, will be taken off his end sentence. In relation to Nathan McDonnell, and we know that he has made a number of bail applications, that his father was going to give a surety of a couple of 100,000, wasn't it? It was 100,000.
Yeah,
like that. And but in relation to him, he has failed in a number of attempts to get bail. His solicitor, Porrick O'Connell, said that basically they're reserving the position at the moment on bail. And given how one charge can't get bail in the district court, he may consider going to the High Court.
Yeah.
So both of them will remain in custody for the moment. We're back on July 30th, obviously, although they're going to appear on July 24th on Video Link. And the book of evidence will be ready for July 30th. So the 24th of July is obviously just a mention.
Yeah.
And that's what happens, especially at district court level. The cases kick along. By July 30th, when the book of evidence, it'll then be sent forward to the appropriate court.
Yeah, that's kind of a bigger moment, I suppose, because at that point the defendants get to see the full extent of the case against them. And then after that book is served at a future point, then there be a formal arraignment where people are asked to make a formal plea. And often at this point you'll have the defendant's representatives indicating that they're pleading not guilty, but that'll be a point at which a formal plea is issued. So these are sort of the milestones that people will have seen over the years.
And of course, most of these charges are facing centre on the seizure of the 500 kilos of crystal meth, which was found in a container at the Cork port in February of this year. And it is alleged that the drugs were hidden in a recycling machine that had been imported from Mexico and stored at McDonald's garden centre at Ballyseedy before it was transported onwards to Cork for Australia. Yeah. So we'll definitely come back to this towards the end of the month.
Thanks, Nicola.
Thanks. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.